We have Joe Blankenship to thank, to tell you that we are pleased to have Dr. Robert Ricketts with us this morning to talk on the subject of the divine proportion. Dr. Ricketts has many, many awards. You can see a number of them in the program. And if I gave all of them, there would be no time left for him. He travels about 60% of the time all over the globe, lecturing on many different subjects in the area of health. I don't want to take up any more of his time because I want to let you tell him as much as time allows about himself and his work and the companies that he has founded.
I'll let you.
And the things that he does. We're real pleased, and I do want you to give a real warm welcome this morning to Dr. Robert Ricketts of Scottsdale, Arizona.
I'm going to be talking today about some of the factors behind morphology, why our bodies are like they are, how they developed, and tonight I'm going to be talking about how we can maintain it, and how we can maintain it to 120 years, which is really what we're designed to be. And about a year and a half ago, I received a phone call from a person on the East Coast. He says, "I'm Dr. Adlai. I'm a member of the Einstein Research Group in New Jersey. I teach physics at University of Virginia. I read an article you wrote in 1982, and we would like for you to be a participant in an international congress on applied physics." I said, "I don't know anything about physics. I'm a farm boy." And he says, "Oh, yes, you do." And so the meeting was held in February the 8th to the 10th last year in Seoul, Korea. And this is essentially the presentation that I give to that group. And it is of great interest to anyone who begins to dig deep, as Brian did for us, and understanding things. This all evolved in morphology and the study of beauty. What makes us attractive, what makes us not attractive. I won't use the word ugly, but you can use it. And so the idea here is to really understand aesthetics, because if we're going to do work in a person, be it plastic surgery, be it orthodontics, be it prosthetics, be it any part of the face, be it cosmology, whatever we want, we should understand what the makeup is and what we can do to it to improve it and what we might do to its demise. So that's where we start. We'll call it divine aesthetics, for want of another word. Next, yeah. And when I first started this, is that upside down? Yes. How did that get upside down? Somebody, let's do it this way here. Put my glasses here. Oh, I got my lid on. Let's turn that over. All right.
I don't think it'll go backward. So let's try.
Yes, it will.
No, it won't. Nope, it won't.
How did these get? Won't go backwards?
That's the problem.
Yes, it will. There we are. Yeah.
I lie a lot.
The subject that I was asked to talk about was symmetry, a search for order in the universe. And so we will be talking about symmetry, the different aspects of symmetry, what really it means. I can't think of anything more symmetrical than airplanes. Of course, you have to compensate if they're not symmetrical, but if you're flying in an airplane, you'd kind of like to have it even, wouldn't you? And so this is it. Brian talked about the Sumerians, and apparently the wheel took until about 500 BC before it was really developed. So the Sumerians were credited. I don't know who really started the wheel, but it's kind of interesting that the wheel is radial symmetry. And why did it take all of the years of mankind before the wheel was developed? Well, you start thinking about it. What did they have to run on? They didn't have roads. So they used sledges. And so in an effort to save economy, we see the wheel developed. And you see one of the ancient wheels in the Egyptian on that vase there. Next. This is from a man by the name of Siberio's work, talking about the symmetry in the earth. Certainly we look at the symmetry and the balance and beauty of nature. Everybody wants to know what is balance. Things get out of balance. What is that balance? What is that equilibrium? Next. We see a certain symmetry developing in lightning. This is a Kirlian photography of our Sedona spark, which is the minerals that we put into some of our products. You see that halo, that what they call a coronal discharge, is even on either side. And this is kind of interesting. And we have to imagine this as a sphere, too. This is flattened out for a photograph. Next. We see a certain order in flowers and petals and leaves, as you see here. What's behind this? Why is it like that? What are the elements then that enter into the formation of these things which are striking? Things that are beautiful to us apparently are registered in the limbic level of our brain and coming out to the cortex up in here, where you have the somatic cortex up in here. So our brains are registering here and in the limbic system. This is what we see. Why is that attractive? And why do we not lose the attraction if it's beautiful? Why do we keep coming back to forms which strike us and are untiring? Next. How many people have horses here? Nobody. Yes, they do. And how many people love to see a horse run? Yeah. And how people can glory in the beauty of an Arabic horse, the head, and it's beautiful. Why? Well, we'll look into it. This is the shell of the nautilus, and you delight in that. You go into somebody's home, they'll have that on them. Why? It keeps your interest. It holds you. It inspires you. You don't get tired of it. You get tired of things like wife, I guess. That's a joke. That's one of Joe's jokes. Okay, next. Well, let's see if that's the one that's, okay, that's the problem you had. It's not dropping. Let me get my glasses. Where did I put them?
It didn't drop?
No, it didn't drop. I need my glasses. Here they are.
Dr. Ricketts, one moment, pardon the intrusion, there's a white Ford outside Oldsmobile with its lights on. Lights on, number 796 on the license plate.
Come on here. I got it. Oh, no.
No, that is right.
Well, we'll go ahead with one. No, we'll see. There may be some in there.
Some salvage.
Oh, me. We'll keep running with one and pick it up over here. The rest of them are in there, it looks like. All right.
We gotta put the top on.
This happened to me. I was lecturing in Israel one time, and we having trouble like this, and the guy said, "Here, let me help you," and I had the top of it off, and he poured every slide right on the ground. I said, well, I changed my lecture. I went back and got a couple of carousels that I had, but no use trying that one. Okay.
I was gonna go back on that one, we lost that one.
All right. Well, we got trouble with both of them. Woe is me. It's too bad because this is a different one.
Yeah, don't tip that one upside down.
See if that's lost.
It
There's
slides
two of them came out. All right. All right. Now let's go back to.
We have no light.
Okay. Oh, boy. Let's see, this one's now on number 10. Put this over here, number 10.
That's,
Okay, no.
Got the hotel AV guy coming down to
Yeah.
give you a hand with this, so he should be down here in a minute.
All right. Oh, this is equipment problem.
yeah.
Okay, I'll have to give this lecture without slides. Let me see if I can recoup here. There is a relationship in nature that it has a particular form of symmetry, which is called dynamic symmetry. If you look at your finger, hold your finger up, bend it a little, you will see that this is a unit of 1, and the next unit is 1.618, mathematically, greater than the length of the first joint. Now the two of these, 1 and 2, make 3, which is the length of the third phalanx. See that? So that's a symmetry. 1, 2, 3. So 1 and 2 make 3. Now if you take the next joint, 2 and 3 make 5. So each one of these units, in order for that to be, which is characteristic of the hand, characteristic of the foot, characteristic of many parts of the body, have this relationship of 1 to 1.618. Now, what that means then is that that is a mathematical relationship which is very similar to what people call Fibonacci numbers. If you take 1 and 2 and add it, that's 3. The last two integers in that series, 2 and 3, make 5. 3 and 5 make 8, and then 13, and then 21, so forth and so on. Now, when you see that, this has a relationship that ties mathematics to geometry. Geometry, of course, precedes mathematics in the Western world. We really didn't have mathematics that worked until about 1202, where Filius Bonaccio, who was the son of a customs agent in Alexandria, a Roman custom agent, brought Arabic numbers to the Roman world. It's pretty hard to multiply with Roman numerals. And it's pretty hard to work without a zero. So bringing those two things really then began to develop the Renaissance. This was one of the factors that produced the Renaissance, because people now could begin to multiply, use mathematics, and it made a tremendous difference. But this relationship was known by the Egyptians. I don't know whether the pyramids were copied in what Joe's going to show you here, with a pyramid that is a double pyramid, some sort of a hexagon of one of the mathematical things that we all study. But the Greeks certainly knew about it. In fact, Pythagoras talked about it, and a man by the name of Phidias, who was a sculptor in Greek times, used it. And so it has the label phi in honor of Phidias. So when you see the circle with a slash through it, that's a signal of phi. And that means a relationship of 1 to 1.618. Now that's just about 62%. So what I was going to show you here is how we apply this in our work, particularly with the face. But I want to talk a little bit more about it before that. The Pythagoreans felt that this was sort of a sacred thing, so it was called sacred geometry. And you had to be initiated into a group and have rites, and you were pledged not to reveal it because of its significance. It didn't get its name, the divine proportion, until Pacioli, who was a teacher of Leonardo da Vinci, taught it to Leonardo. See, Leonardo put it in all of his artworks, and all of these. This is the origin then of the application of the divine proportion, which was named divine by Pacioli. So it carries the name, the golden cut, if you understand that, mean and extreme ratios. It has the name of the divine proportion, and I call it the divine equation, because you have to add up things together. Now, I need a pretty face, okay? Your face is pretty. You sit right out here now. I want to show you here. So you can make this tool, which you see here. I have this on the slides and all, but I can show you now, and I'll let you find out if you're pretty or ugly here pretty quickly. All right? Now, most people that have a nice face have a point right up here where her hair comes together right here. And if you raise your forehead, that's it, right there. That point is called trichion. Of course, if you lose your hair there, you've just got a wrinkle right there. So that's where yours is, right above that wrinkle. If the Indian scalps you, he comes right around here. He starts right here because this is scalp, this is face. So this separates the scalp from the face.
And it's called trichion?
Trichion, T-R-I for triangle, okay? Now, if we use this divider, which is a tool that will expand or contract depending upon how you pull it, but it will maintain that relationship. So we use this in plastic surgery. If I'm going to change a face, I'm going to do something, I use it in my work in orthodontics, because our idea is to so-called harmonize the parts of that face, balance that face, or bring them into the divine balance, the divine proportion that we're looking at. So we'll show you here how this works in her. If you notice now, from her trichion to her chin is the golden proportion. Now turn around here so they can see over here. I'll do it from this side for you people over on this side. Now, if we turn that upside down without changing it, that's going to be the curve of her nose. Right there. See it? So that is a reciprocal relationship. And let's see what you look like, sweetheart. You see? If you have a nice face, that's what you'll have. Okay? Now, below that then, if we take the eye to the nose to the chin, that has a divine proportion in it. You see here? The eye to the nose to the chin. Turn that upside down, and it's the eye to the mouth to the chin. See that? You got it, sweetheart. The eye to the mouth to the chin. See? Now, if we go down below, we see the nose to the mouth to the chin. Show people over here. Oh, you can see that up there, good. You can look up there, I didn't know we had it there. Now, if we look at her lips, the upper lip is 1 and the lower lip is 1.618, that lip. So you ladies that have a thin upper lip or a full lower lip, get them in balance, you see. When you put your lipstick on, make sure that you get the upper one about 1 to 1.618 there. Now open your mouth a little bit. Now if we look at the size of her teeth, the lower tooth is 1 and the upper central incisor is 1.618. How you like that? Huh? You see? And then it goes right through the denture. So when we create an occlusion for a patient, we set it up in these proportions so that you see the smile that doesn't go away. You see somebody that looks like that, and you're not going to throw them back. That's good, see? All right, now let's look at your hand. You got arthritis. Now that's, well, I'll do something about that too for you. So if you look here now at her hand, there's that proportion, and that takes care of that joint. And then the next one then is back there. Can you see that on the tape? See? Now the interesting thing is that your hand is 1 and your elbow is 1.618. Now if we come up here, this comes up to the top of the scapula so that when your arms go this way, you can tie your tie. If you didn't, you'd either go here or come up short. You see, the body's put together that way. Now stand up. You got high heels? No. Now from the top of the head to the top of the hip, this is 1 and that's 1.618. Yeah. If you put your arms out like this, the torso is 1 and this is 1.618. Isn't that kind of interesting? Yeah? Okay, now there's a lot of others that you can sit down now. here, over here. Okay, okay. Now that's the way we use this thing. And so it has an application to the body, and it has an application to the reconstruction of a patient. What we have here on tape, or on the slides I was going to show you here, is how we actually apply this, how we can analyze a person. Now, it doesn't make any difference whether their face is long or the face is short. As long as the proportions are there, the face is attractive. It gets out of balance when one part of it is short and the other part is long, because it's a proportion. And it's just like one arm being too long or one leg being too long, and so forth and so on. So we have this application of the divine proportion. Now, I think probably what I should do, how much time have I got now? 39 minutes. Gosh, I missed my slides here. I'll have to create something else here. Let me take off now on some of the other aspects of proportion and the other aspects of what we might call balance and harmony. What I have gotten into in the past 20 years is a study of interstitial fluid. It is the chief balancer in the body. If we start thinking about it, most people say, well, how does a cell get its nutrition? How does it get its nutrients? How does it really work? Does the blood vessel go directly to the cell? There is no place where the blood vessel is small enough to go to a cell. Does a nerve go to a cell? No, there is not a nerve that's small enough to go to the cell. Does a lymph gland or lymph loop go to the cell? It doesn't go there. Well, how does the cell get its food? So there is a group of needs that the cell has in order to survive. Any cell in your body, of the several trillion cells in your body, need to have nourishment. They need nutrients. They need oxygen. And in order to get that oxygen, exactly how does it occur? So the interesting thing here is that the cell has fluid inside it, which is the majority of the fluid in your body. The greatest amount of fluid you have is in the individual cell. The second body of fluid that you have is in your bloodstream. Of course, you may have some fluid in your joints and synovial fluid. You may have some fluid in the spinal tract and the cerebrospinal fluid. But that leaves then another area, and that is called interstitial fluid. Interstitial meaning between small areas. Interstellar means between large spaces. Interstitial means small spaces. So the blood then, through the capillary system, has a contact with an intermediate medium of fluid. Now, in this fluid, and if I had the overhead here, I could run up and get some illustrations. I'll be talking about this in the workshop. I'll get these slides fixed for the workshop. And so the interstitial fluid then, I call a mother tissue, because it is a matrix. Matrix comes from the word mother, it comes from ma meaning. And it means a safe place to return, a place of comfort. It means a place of security. So we talk about matrix. We talk about matrix also as the framework, as the network that we make up. So this is called a matrix. You all know this. But within this fluid, it is also called the extracellular spaces. extracellular spaces. Now this is the loose connective tissue that you see. It's the reason then that we can move. We're elastic, and we're elastic by virtue of this fluid, this particular space that's there. Within that space, there are cells, there are mast cells, there are plasma cells. Within this space is the nerve endings. Within this space, there's nerve endings for the sympathetic system, for the autonomic nervous system. So all of this is coming together. Now the individual cell needs oxygen, so it comes out of the blood vessel by diffusion, controlled by osmosis, as all of you learned in your high school biology. And it gives then to the intracellular, in between the cells, into this matrix. Now that matrix is what you get with a blood vessel, with a blister. If you get the fluid in the blister, that is interstitial fluid that's coming out. It's what happens in edema. If you sit on the airplane and your feet swell up, your legs swell up, it's edema. The water, the fluid is pooling in this area. And so that's where edema takes place. So that's where the control is located. So and because it permeates the whole body, it is one large organ. It's like an organ, but we don't see it written that way in our anatomy books. We don't have it taught that way in our medical schools, and I don't know why. I don't know why it is sort of missed. It's sort of been taken for granted, this area, and it is the regulatory system that controls all of our body. The interesting thing is that if I prick you with a needle right here, immediately that sensation goes to your body and up with the speed of sound. There's a communication that takes place by way of the interstitial fluid. And what does that sound like? Acupuncture points. The acupuncture meridians are all located in this particular area. And there are different areas that have different sensations. So it's really a very, very interesting part of our body. Now let me go a little further with it. Each individual cell needs its nutrients. What are the nutrients? Well, you all know about carbohydrates and fats and proteins and so forth and so on. But also it has to have minerals. And what do the minerals do? Electrolytes. We have to have the control of the ions because in the interstitial fluid, there's a high level of sodium. In the cell, it's higher in potassium. So this regulation is taking place by the proper amount of plus and minus charges that gives us our regulation for all of the body, all the time. So we need minerals for this. This is how they act, and this is particularly where they're very important. But there's another function now, and that is the pH. That means that there has to be an acid-alkaline balance that goes along with the electrolytes. And every cell in the body usually has a charge of slightly alkaline, 7.3 to 7.4, 7 being neutral. In the stomach, the acid is down to 3. Anything that is lower is acid. Anything above 7 is alkaline. And so a lot of times what we see today is that the body is too acid. Everybody knows that. A cancer cell likes acid. Anything that is acid is going to invite the growth of a cancer. In order to combat the cancer, get the body or get the local regulatory system on the negative side. and that's what we need. We need to get it on the alkaline side, I should say. You haven't given up, huh? Well, there's some goody good stuff here back in the back, so maybe we can see that. So I'm trying to explain to you the role of pH. A cancer cell also is an anaerobic cell. It lives without oxygen. So where do you see cancers form? Places where you don't get good circulation, where you don't have a lot of oxygen. So I'm getting to you with the regulatory system here and how important it is to point at that. When you're talking about health, you're talking about longevity, you're talking about energy, and you're talking about vitality. Where is it? See? If it doesn't get to this point, it doesn't get there. So this is the reason why medicine has missed this so flat out that it's really amazing that I suppose it took until 1982 before we could get in and measure this fluid and so forth. The man that's done the most in this is a man by the name of Pischinger, and the Europeans are way ahead of the Americans in this regard. They are much more biologically oriented. Americans tend to be mechanically oriented. We want to put things in the computer and take all the symptoms over here and then go over here and match it with what we use for that symptom. And that's the way we do it. It's sort of a placation of the patient until the body really gets healed. That's just about the way that some of it works. Okay. All right. You want to look at that now? Let me finish what I was on, then we can, okay, let me finish this a little bit, now I'm on it. So these things are needed. The cell needs oxygen, the cell needs nutrients, it needs to be controlled by the electrolytes, and it needs a pH balance. Where does that take place? In the interstitial fluid. Now, the next thing is, when we eat food, it goes through about 14 different chambers, starting with the oral cavity before we expel it. There's about 14 areas where the treatment of food is different in the body. And how does the food then get into the blood vessels? Through the interstitial fluid. Now this is the interesting thing. That in the stomach you have rugae in the stomach, which extracts some of the fluids. Then it goes through the duodenum where it's treated by the enzymes from the pancreas and liver bile and so forth. But most of it comes in the intestine where you have these little villi. They're like little fingers, like little hairs that are absorptive cells. Well, where does it go from there? In the interstitial fluid. Because it doesn't transport directly from there to a blood vessel. It has to go through this process coming in and the delivery. Then, what does interstitial fluid do? It collects the waste. So the cells are getting rid of their waste in the same fluid that they're eating from. That's a pretty interesting thing. Nature's pretty clever, isn't it? See? So all the waste, the carbon dioxide and all of this, is delivered then to the interstitial fluid. Then where does it go? After it comes out of the interstitial fluid, it goes into the lymph glands. Some of it goes back on the venial side of the capillary loop, but a great deal of it goes into a loop, which is a closed-end lymph gland. It goes through the lymph vessel, and it goes to the lymph. Then the lymph cleans it up. It goes back, and it comes in at the thoracic duct up here in your neck, goes back into the bloodstream, and it goes back to the liver, where it's processed. Pretty clever, huh? Nature's pretty good that way. So I got interested in the interstitial fluid for 2 or 3 reasons. I began to ask questions like any inquisitive person would, because in the patients that I was treating, sometimes the roots would resorb. Instead of the tooth moving normally, the root would resorb. And what was the problem? Why, if I give one child or person a treatment and the roots would maintain themselves and everything would go along all right, and then pretty soon a patient would come along and the root would be resorbing rather than the bone resorbing away. What was happening? So one day in my library, in my laboratory, I laid out the records of about 12 patients who had a lot of root resorption. And I said, there's got to be something in common with all of these people. And what is it? So I left them out. And about 2 months later, I saw it. And what do you think it was? I began to see allergic shiners under here. These children had allergies or asthma. And what's characteristic of that? Oxygen. There was not enough oxygen in the tissue because anoxia is the first stage of necrosis. And this is death. This is necrotic. So I began to query about this. And, well, what's going on here? So looking further then, it's interstitial fluid. The oxygen can't get in unless the interstitial fluid is good. So I began to study interstitial fluid in that regard. Well, so that took me then into the whole body, which I'd been into anyway. Let's look at this, and maybe we can have some fun here with this. And I'm sorry about the equipment here. What am I looking for? A pointer? Okay. No, I'm looking for a pointer. I think this will work for a while. Okay. Now, what's that look like? Yeah, we'll just go with this one here. Yeah. All right. That's in Babylon. And I use it to show that the divine proportions were known at that time. Isn't that beautiful architecture? That's Babylon. Yeah. Okay. Now this is what I was talking about before. If you look at the foot, and we say, I need another pointer. There's one up here. This one. Don't want to break a leg. Okay. If you notice here, this is 1 to 1.618. This is 1.618 here. I pointed out the top of her head to here. Look, and these are some of these relationships that we see here. This is in the ear, the cochlea in the ear. The logarithmic spiral has as its base a golden triangle, which is 1 to 1.618 on each side. So we'll go through that in detail. A lot of trees, many plants have a distribution of 1 to 1.618 to 1.618. The branches of a tree go 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. So does the kidney. The human kidney is like the branches of a tree in this sense. The lattice work that you see in the DNA molecule, the width of it is 1, the length of it is 1.618. We see the same thing in collagen. Now, this is a beautiful face. This is a model. Her name was Becky Smith. She was a Merle Norman ad. And so I took about 12 of the most beautiful models that I could find, and let's see what there was in common with them. So we began to find out these relationships that I pointed out on this lady here. And you can see it's 1 to 1.618, turn it upside down. And in depth then from the ear to the lateral canthus of the eye here and to the tip of the nose, it makes this proportion. So in order for that face to be that way, it has to have an under matrix. It has to have the skeletal matrix underneath. And that's where we do our work. This is a model that was a girl that was a Raiderette. She was one of the girls for the Raiders when they were in Los Angeles. We did a little work on her. She had a nice face, so I used her for this analysis that you saw on the face. So this is how we do it. Also, the width of the nose is 1 to the width of the mouth, then to the width of the lateral canthus of the eye. So you can see here then, this is the width of her nose, and you can see how then this face is a medley of all of these divine proportions, if you begin to look at it. And no one can look at this without really appreciating the Almighty. And so we begin to look at these dimensions here, from the temporomandibular joint here, from the back, it's 1 to the front end of the lower jaw, it's 1.618. So we begin to see all of these. So you can have a proportion on one line, you can have it between two lines, they may overlap, dimensions may be equal. So we have all of these that we use on a scientific basis when we begin to do our work in children. Now we have racial types that we have to deal with. This was a woman now that we had, and you can see how this is her after. That's the same patient after surgery. Doesn't look like the same person, but that's her. Here's another one. Of course, we should see both slides here to see this. And this was the plan then, and this is the actual. And this is this girl after we got finished. And she was a model. She was trying to get a business as model, but she had a huge lower jaw. And she wanted to be improved. So this is her now, a successful model. That's another patient. Our equipment here is, okay. All right. Okay. This is this little lady after treatment. She had had orthodontics for 6 years. She had temporomandibular joint involvement, and she was sent to me for a temporomandibular joint problem. And with the morphology that she had to deal with, I didn't see any way that we could really help her until we did the surgery on her face first. And this was her. This is a patient with what is called a hemihypertrophy. Not only was her face crooked, but it's as if the growth juice on one side of the body gets more juice than the other side, showing that the two halves of our bodies are different. One arm was longer than the other. It was her left arm. The left tongue, the left half of her tongue was greater. Left hand was bigger. The left leg was bigger, so she had to walk kind of like this. The left breast was bigger on her. She wanted to make it as a model. And why a girl like this would want to be a model, I don't know, but she did. So what can you do for me? Notice that the left ear is larger than the right ear. The right eye, the right orbit is smaller than her left orbit. So all of this, there's her hands. And so we had a lot of planning to do with her. This is after the surgery we did. And darn it. So this is her after treatment, before and after. Okay. Okay, all right. Well, you can see the difference in her face. Gee, I don't know what happened here. So these are All right. Now that's Audrey Hepburn. I studied her face, and I talked about 15 minutes. That's too long for me today.
Added another 10, so if you want to stop at 5.
Jesus. Oh, God. Okay, I've had this experience before. Now, this is a newborn baby. And what I'm trying to point out here is that all of these parts of the skull are all kind of loose. There are big spaces between them. You can take the old Indian mother would get down off her horse and have her baby, and she'd take the head and start squeezing it around to reform it. And the old Indians never had many malocclusions. They had mother's milk, which was right off of the earth, you know. And so I was called in to work with the group of Lactation Institute in Los Angeles, and I had to study newborns that couldn't suckle. They couldn't suckle. They had to put an eyedropper in to get them to survive until we could get the reflexes right and get the mechanisms right. So I started studying newborns. This is a golden triangle. It's a spruce tree here. And you see, as it grows, it maintains its form. And so I say this divine proportion is the key to beauty. Once you witness and recognize this key, you will never, from this moment on, ever again in your life, look upon objects of delight, art, and beauty in the same manner. You can't. If you will notice the key to your room, where's mine? The key here to your room is the divine proportion. If you look at all your credit cards, so forth, if you look here, that's the divine proportion. Why would the key to your room have the golden rectangle? Your credit card, most of the pads that you write on, letters, most of the objects that you see that you don't tire of, like picture frames, doors, windowsills, so forth and so on, will be in the divine proportion. Now, many architects knew this intuitively, but this instrument, I've had many architects say, "Can I have one of these?" You know, can I have one of these? So this one was made for surgery. It's in metal, so it could be autoclaved, and so when we do the surgery, we go right in and use this. When we put the face back together again, we put it back together in the divine proportion. I've never seen anybody that wasn't really beautiful after that. So once you see this, and once you appreciate it, it's something that stays with you forever. Okay. Now, why? Let's get back to why. Things that look good function well. Things that don't look too good are not working too well. It's difficult. There has to be compensations. So the body is put together this way. It's been shown that man, for instance, has all the records for endurance. That's pretty interesting. A cheetah can run 60 miles an hour. A man can't. But a man can track down a cheetah because he can outdistance it. He can go and go and go. He's only got 2 legs and he's upright here. And he's got a lot of advantage that we don't think about that the human has physically. I talk about on the other side here that love is a pleasure to the heart. The most beautiful in the world is not seen or touched, but is felt in the heart. And so that's kind of the end of that there. These are, this is a patient, to give you an idea of the application of some of these things to human beings. There's that boy. He's only 11, and he stuttered a little bit. And what can you do with him? So, this. Oh, he's supposed to be after that. Okay. I don't know. Lesson number 1: bring your own bring your own equipment. Okay. Okay. That's too bad. Light went out? Oh, there's one stuck. All right. Well, this is the way we use it. I was supposed to talk about the divine proportion, and what I've done is try to show you how that can apply to the human face, to the human body. We use the same principles in rehabilitation. There's a lot of techniques, osteogenesis distraction now, in which you can cut a bone and lengthen it. You can cut the jaw, lengthen it. You can take part out and move it back and so forth. And this is what we're about in that. One last thing, and that is that early in my career, I started dealing with rheumatoid arthritis. My original research, starting in 1947, dealt with tomography, which is making a cut, making a layer, laminography. Tomography means cut, through the jaw joint. The jaw joint was very hard to x-ray because it's superimposed. It's sitting in a fossa, and we couldn't get x-rays of it. So it lent itself. So I was the first one, really, to investigate the temporomandibular joint on a morphologic basis, and I started a lot of this now 54 years ago. When we began to, I did it to study the growth of the jaw, because the growth of the jaw, like the long bones, grows at the end, and the jaw joint was where the growth was taking place. So what I tried to do was to set up a protocol to study the growth of the face and the growth of the mandible, the lower jaw. When it was demonstrated that I could get such beautiful x-rays, really nobody could argue with, I began to have patients referred to me then for all sorts of pathology, one of which was rheumatoid arthritis in children. And so I diagnosed them, saw the differences, and saw how the jaw was warping in growth. So I went to my medical colleagues in the medical school, because the x-ray machine was in the School of Medicine. Dr. Ivy at that time was there, and a lot of very big names in medicine at that time. So I went to them, what have we got to treat rheumatoid arthritis? And the answer was nothing. Nothing. In 1947. They were trying to inject gold and silvers and everything else, but nothing was there. So I began to read, and I found out the field of nutrition had some hope. Some people were using basic minerals and some things along this way, but some of these people that were putting on natural foods were going into remission from rheumatoid arthritis. So that took me into another level. So I went to the dean of the school, and I said, what would you think about me dropping out for a year or so and getting a PhD in endocrinology? He says, well, that'd be great. So by this time it was, I was broke. I'd been going to school, and I'd borrowed money from everybody that I could, and I was deep in research, working about 20-hour day at that time. And so I began to read Dr. Salyer's work. Then I became a friend of Dr. Salyer. I became his dental consultant in his own mouth. And I was with him on several occasions, lecturing and so forth. So I got to know Dr. Salyer very well. I read his work. I visited him at his hospital in Montreal when he was there. And so this took me then into sickness into not only what it took to be well, but what it took to treat sickness. And so I'm going to talk about that tonight. I'm going to talk about my relationship with Cellier, what sickness really is, how you can prevent it, how you can treat it, and how we can all live to be 120. I hope I make it. In 2 months, I'll be 81. And so I hope I can still kick the shit out of everybody by then. Okay. All right. Thanks a lot. That's it.